Hi, everyone. Let me share my screen. This is 1.3. I'm going to go through it quickly. So if you have any questions, of course, you can ask when we're back in class. So when we talk about uh, the scientific method, we know that means, doing things systematically and carefully, following a pattern, collecting data, making a hypothesis, making a theory, eventually maybe making into something a law. So their theories are just, broad approaches, but they're not proven. It means that things need to be tested and they'll be tested over and over again. When we talk about different types of research, we have correlational research and experimental research. Correlation does not imply causation. Just because two things go together doesn't mean that they are causing one or the other to happen. We do experimental research in hopes to find observable effects. Um, and we try our best to set up the experiment so it's a controlled environment so we don't have as many uh, outstanding distractions or any types of bias. So again, when we're doing correlation, you have to forget negative and positive signs. Like on a number, the negative sign on a correlation would say that it's a negative correlation. That means as one increases, the other one decreases. If it's a positive sign, it means it's a positive correlation. And as one increases, the other one increases, or as one decreases, the other one decreases. And you don't have to know this chart, it just gives an example for people to look at. So naturalistic observation is awesome if you can do it. You just observe a situation, like watching children, playing on a playground. The disadvantage is you lose control. Other people could be aware that you're watching them. They may, think you're a pedophile if you're just sitting there watching children. So make sure you have documentation. And of course, if parents would be around, you would want to make sure you get permission before doing that. But most of the times, research is actually done in a laboratory or a controlled space. We can now use technology also to help us get data for research. Some people still do surveys. Surveys are great for getting a lot of information uh, from a lot of people, but people can lie, so you don't always know. Okay. And there's the review question, sample question. So when we talk about an experiment, of course, you're going to give the experimental group whatever the treatment or what you're trying to test. The control group is the control. You don't do anything to it. That's what you're going to compare. What you change in the experimental group is the independent variable. The thing that happens because of the change is the dependent variable. You should always work for a random assignment. Therefore, you can say that there was no bias because of the sampling that you used. Again, if you want to read over the chart, but you are not required to know the chart. So the difference between a field study and a laboratory study, again, field study would be natural environment. Laboratory study, nice controlled setting. That's where you're going to see most people do that. It's much cheaper, much more time efficient, and less likely to have any outside distractions that could disrupt your experiment. When we talk about theoretical approach or applied approach, theoretical approach is basically testing some possible explanation for something. Whereas when we apply our research, it's meant to be something practical, to solve something immediate. So say an issue like with COVID, um, how do we help people get through this thing? It isn't theoretical. It would be trying to help people who were developing anxiety and stress disorders because of COVID. And contributions, research is very, very important. It helps us to give information about important questions. It can help develop new laws in our in our world in general, not only in psychology. It can help new programs and it can increase effectiveness of the things that we already have. Longitudinal studies are things over a long period of time. One or more individuals, it may be 10 years, 15 years, 20 years down the line. Problems that a lot of people may drop out, so you need to start with a large group. People move, people die, people get bored and don't want to do it anymore. And they also might become used to whatever you're using as a test. Therefore, it may actually impede your results. Cross-sectional studies are when we're looking at people at different ages at a particular point in time. So, 30-year-olds, 40-year-olds, 50-year-olds, all in, 2026. Again, a lot of people may drop out um, due to just the particular age group, the different places that you might be using, but it's a different way of doing research that might be more beneficial than longitudinal research. Sequential studies is when you go after a number of different age groups over several points of time. So it's another one of those long range things, but it's looking at different age groups over and over, like sequential, like every 2 years, every 4 years, every 6 years. So, what are some ethics when it comes to psychology? Freedom from harm. Again, the purpose is never to do harm to any individuals. You should always have informed consent. The use of deception. You may deceive people. That is permitted as long as after the experiment is over, you debrief the person, explain to them the experiment, and make sure that they are perfectly fine. And of course, you have the HIPAA laws. Everything has to be made private. Okay. Some other guidelines for knowing if something is valid. Always make sure of what the source is. Joe Schmo's blog isn't the best source for your psychological research. Make sure to check the credentials of the person. Make sure you understand that there are differences between scientific evidence and anecdotal evidence. Okay, things that just kind of went together, and look for that correlational research. Um, are things clearly cited in the research study and the research paper? Is there anything about the cultural context this experiment took place that may have affected it in some way? And just because many people believe something doesn't mean that it's actually true. Everyone could believe one thing, but it could be completely false. And review, sample question, and sample short-term question. So that's our quick, in a nutshell, review for 1.3. If you have any questions in class next week, let me know and I'll be glad to go over them. And I hope you have a good weekend.